Hello everyone, and welcome to this little yapping session of mine. I had to re-record this first part just because I felt like the points I was trying to make were not coming across the way I would like them to be. So, here we are. Now I just want to begin by mentioning that I love Wuthering waves, right? I think so far, especially Resonators has been exceptional in almost every aspect, but then you still have some parts in the game that do need some more work that I want to briefly mention, and some of the potential that the game has, but hasn't implemented so far, or so far hasn't planned. Now, in the following points, I'm not... Oh shit, I missed that. I'm not gonna mention companion quests. I'm only gonna focus on what was, shown in the story quests, as well as just the overall game and map design. Just because I haven't played them yet. I haven't played most of the companion quests and world quests so far. And the first thing I want to talk about is actually the story writing for 2.2. Which I think was great. I didn't listen to other people's take on this yet, so I don't know how it was perceived in the eyes of the community overall. But I thought it was very time efficient, but still kept very informative and impactful. I think it was around 3 to 4 hours long in total. Of course, I took longer because I'm just slow. When you compare that to other stories from other gachas, as I remember, it's a lot shorter. Of course, you always have the slow beginning, getting to know the characters that are introduced with the version. In this case, I think it was Chacona. We got to meet Cantarella, while Cardafia was already mentioned or shown at the end of 2.0, which is just in general a focus on the environment, the characters, and the lore. And later when we have the slow gondola and puzzle part in the Avenolium, that is mostly just to take in the environment and to get to know the new maps, which I think is totally fine, right? It's a bit of a stretch, but it serves its own purpose. Later on, when it comes to the lore bombs, the background of Cardafia, it picks up pace, and you can really see that. And then of course you just have the finale, right? With the boss fight against Fleur-de-Lis. You got the music. You've got the cinematic sort of gameplay with all three rovers at the same time. For the background of Cardafia, where she regains her memory, you have these cinematic panels, or whatever you want to call them. And I think it's just really good balance between the pacing, the information that is actually given to the reader. But what could be a little better is the actual gameplay. But I'm gonna talk about that in a bit. First, I want to mention some specific parts in the story that were mentioned that I found were just exceptional. And I'm gonna start off weak by mentioning the glossary. But still, the glossary was a great implementation of just when you have certain words or terms in the story. But the glossary is there, you can click on the word, you know what the word means, and it just helps you understand the story better. Especially when it is about terms that were used in 2.0, and you might not remember the story all too well, which was kind of the case when I played it, because I played 2.2 pretty late, like a couple of weeks into the anniversary, so I didn't really know what was going on at first. So the glossary did help a lot there. The next thing that was mentioned in the story is about the sentinels and their resonator, which is great because it's set kind of like how the story is going to be like continuously told in the future. If you don't know what I'm talking about, the part where the sentinels are mentioned is when Cantarella tried to ask Rover if they could not ask the sentinel Yui and Jinchi from Jinzhou to help them with the problems in Renacita. And the Rover responds with something along the lines of that the sentinels and their resonator cannot just abandon their region because they are tied to the people there to protect them by duty. Which basically just sets the bar for future story quests as well. That within each region, there's not gonna be outside help of other sentinels or resonators. Or their resonators. Which kind of makes the story dependent on Rover to continue, to move forward. But so far it's not written in a weird way. Like, it makes perfect sense. It's a good implementation, it sets the bar. And we know the Rover is among the most powerful, if not the most powerful resonator. And when I talk about the character, I'm gonna mention that as well. But they know now what they're capable of. Which means that Rover is necessary for the story to continue. And yeah, so far it's not written in a weird way. It's not... The story is not self-conscious. And I hope they continue to have this quality in writing going forward. And now we come to a thing that is not... It is not so great. And that is about, you know, the swords. In the beginning, we hear about the sword of, I think, divinity, Tyrvine. And you hear about, you know, its importance, its place in the story. And what makes the sword of divinity, right? I don't know how to explain that, but you are told its importance. Now, the issue is that with the other two swords, Haultir and Hognis, it's not as much the case there. They are mentioned, but it feels more like in the story we just wander around, do the puzzles in order to collect the swords to advance the story, but we're not really told their importance, their place in all the lore. So those two feel kind of neglected. They just feel like puzzles, or pieces of the puzzle. So I do think they should have at least have like a small section where the importance of those two are touched upon as well. But yeah, they kind of just felt like puzzle pieces and not actual story elements. But other than that, the story writing was great. In regards to the characters, I'm gonna talk about that in a bit. But overall, I enjoyed it a lot. Now, accompanying the story and the writing is, of course, the gameplay. And I have a couple issues with the gameplay. The thing with the gameplay is, it's entirely locked behind Rover, right? You can only use the Rover, I think, also a single element throughout the entire story gameplay. Also fighting the mini-boss towards the end. asking why. It makes sense. In certain parts. It doesn't matter when you do like the puzzles, which character you use, right? But just like the combat sections, they're just dragged out by using rover only, I feel. And if you have a couple of them, it just starts to get boring. It would be a lot better if you could just use your team. I just think it doesn't matter that much. Now, in the mini boss, I think it's fine. Because if you actually could use your proper team, most players would just obliterate that enemy. Like, it would be over in 2 seconds. I think there it's fine to just have it rover locked. But for rest, I don't think it's necessary. Now, in regards to that, we had Cardathea as a companion. Right? Just her removing the residue of the dark tide. But now, listen. What if we actually had, in the story gameplay, Cardathea with only her basic attacks and animations as a trial character? Because they did that with Cantarella, but full kit. Because she was released already. But then, with Cardathea, I know she's only gonna released in a later version. But if they had at least like the basic attacks and animations done for the character, why not just showcase them in the trial? Yeah, in the story gameplay. Because it would make the parts where you can only use Rover a lot more exciting, right? You can use a new character, even though it's just the basic attacks. I would argue, when you only use Rover, there's not a lot going on. You have the basic attacks, you can hold the attack. You have the elemental skill, and you have the resonance liberation. But on Rover, there's nothing going on. Really, it's not spectacular. It's just you press a button, and it places an animation for 2 seconds. So, having Cardathea with only basic attacks as a trial character during those sections, it would just add a lot more. You have a preview of the character already, and making up your mind if you're gonna pull her or not. But also, in the story elements, like the mini boss, we know that Knight had previous relations with Cardathea. So that boss fight would be a lot more exciting and a lot more impactful in the story if you could actually fight him with Cardathea herself. One hole in my argument is that Cardathea might not be like combat ready at that time. She might be too scared, or just doesn't really know how to fight. So that would kind of make sense that they didn't add that, because we know she kind of like only regained her confidence later when she regains some memory. But I don't know, it's kind of like maybe something in future story quests when we see something similar. Might just be an interesting thing to have. The boss fight against Flurleys, right, when you could use all 3 rovers, I think was absolute cinema. I had so much fun. Just basic casting intro skill after intro skill was such like a, almost like a playable cutscene, and it looked fucking amazing. Now, one argument a friend of mine brought up is it was too short. Like, that section should have been there, especially to, you know, test out the Aero rover, and you just didn't have enough time to really figure out his kit during all of that. Or, you know, see every attack and animation. Because the boss was just killed too quickly. So that might be something they can adjust later on. Now moving on, I want to talk about the characters in 2.2. And I do want to begin by mentioning something that I felt wasn't really up to par with the rest. And that is Connor herself. She made a brief appearance in the beginning of 2.2, which I felt was pretty random. She mentioned she was sent there by Carlotta, but I didn't really see the point other than just introducing a new character. It was comedic, sure, it was a funny, it was funny meeting her, but there wasn't much of a point to her. There was no previous mention of a character, and overall she just had little relevancy. I know she put Grover to sleep and created basically this, what the fuck, okay, and created the meetup between Rover and Cardafia, the second one. At the time, I didn't really see the connection. For me, Chakona, I'm sorry, it was pretty random. Like, even now, we don't know anything of the character. And, from this point, there is only 1 day left on the Zani banner. Which means that Chakona is gonna be, like, obtainable in around 2 days. But we don't know anything about her. She requires more screen time. If not now, in the future story. Or, similar to Zani being in a world quest about Avarado Vault, we need her in her own separate world quest. I don't think only companion quests cut it. Like, there needs to be more story relevancy to these characters for them to be actually interesting. Because why would I need to play the companion quest first for me to get to know a character, right? I don't know. I don't feel that's right. Especially if in a gacha game, these characters are supposed to sell. And this conveys the feeling that the character is only there for the kit and not relevancy. But could just be me. Next is Cantarella. I think Cantarella in the story was actually great. She was previously mentioned already, so it was great to finally be able to meet her. Now, of course, I'm not gonna mention her companion quest since I haven't played it, but you could already tell from the story alone. She has a very in-depth background, and she has a lot of personal struggles. And we know that within the Thessalias, and also later on with being, spoiler, the actual Blessed Maiden. Now, of course, her design is one thing, right? I think Chao Connor's design, very cute, very, very nice. Cantarella's design, questionable, yeah. I didn't pull for her when her banner dropped, since the character just in general didn't excite me too much. But there isn't really a reason for it. I don't have a reason for it, so don't pick me apart for that. You don't have to pull for every character, right? So her design is definitely one thing. But the camera angles in that story quest, what the fuck are we doing? They really weren't necessary. We didn't need the zoom-ins. It would have been perfectly fine if the camera was 1 meter away from her womanly features. Okay? That's all I'm gonna say. But Cantarell is one of those characters that I feel like make it worth playing the companion quests, actually. Which I felt was not worth it in other gachas at all. On to the next character, Rover. I will say I played the story with the female rover, and yes, the voice actor isn't the same as the male rover. They can improve, but it's not the world. It's still fine generally. The relevancy in the story of Rover is, as I mentioned before, really well written. They now know, because of the Black Shores and Shorekeeper, what they're capable of. And they conveyed that at the end of 2.2 pretty well. But not in a cringe way. So I really like that. Like, Rover was full of confidence. But they're not written as in rubbing it in other characters' face. Or the player's face, essentially. This is all I want to mention regarding them. And now, Cardafia and Fleur-de-Lis. Their character is absolute cinema, right? Like, Cardafia is cute and silly in the story. And we love her for that. But she's also serious when needed in the story. So, whenever there is a lore bomb, whenever she regains her memories, it's almost like you're talking to a different person. And then at the end, when Cardafia and Fleur-de-Lis actually, like, re-merge into one resonator, like, her entire personality changes. Because you now have these... Because before it was two split personalities, and now you have them in one again. I think... I haven't seen the Cardafia leaks too much. And I'm not going to show them here now. But I also have a feeling that is going to be touched upon in her actual, like, character. In her, when she's actually obtainable. That you actually get to see both sides of her. Of course, through the leaks I know the gameplay, but just from, you know, the characters' idols, for example. Having talked about the characters in 2.2 specifically, I want to talk about characters in Wuthering Waves in general. And here we come to the part where I want to just mention my general worries with the game as well. Like, I think the characters and the gameplay so far has been really great. I mean, it's one of these games where ultimates of a character feel like ultimates. They are impactful with great animations. But also, each character's design suits their respective theme as well. But of course, then you have designs like Cantarella and more so Fleur-de-Lis that are right on the nose when it comes to sexualization. I'm not gonna call that out as an issue. It's still very tame when you compare it to other gacha games. But I don't feel like it's necessary. The designs don't have to look the way they do. They can be different. If there are lore reasons, sure. But if we were talking about just clothing alone, you can look at you can look at characters like Zani and just, what the fuck are they doing in the background? Anyway, this character is like still fully clothed. You know, why can we not have that more often? We can keep them clothed. And that brings me about one thing. I know who most of these are supposed to appeal to, right? But the in-game designs don't need to look this way. Skins, however, that can be bought, can look however. I don't care. But the base skins can have more decency. I like that they don't do it for every character, but, you know, it's like whatever. It's not warranting to quit the game over. But it's just something that I feel like doesn't need to be the way it is. When it comes to character design, I also want to mention armor. So far in Wuthering Waves, I don't think any character really had armor. In general. And maybe like modern type armor, but not like plate armor. The medieval type. Except for Fleur-de-Lis, I believe. Like, her design has... like, actually, like, gauntlets. A gauntlet on her right arm. But I'm just like... when it comes to armor in games... and I'm gonna sound like a total nerd in this... either go all the way, or don't have armor on a character at all. Because... think about this. Her having just a gauntlet and a shoulder piece. What the fuck is that gonna protect? Right? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. It looks great, yes. However, it doesn't make sense for her to have a gauntlet on that arm, I feel. Now, if she had a gauntlet on both arms, maybe armor on her legs, you know, maybe like protecting like the vital parts, it makes sense. And it can still be a great character design. But don't do half of it. Don't do armor and then back out of having like actual protection. It needs to make sense. Please, just just make it make sense. It's a great design trope, but we can't have this half-assed stuff, you know? Especially because it makes sense in Renacita. It has more of this historic feel to it. So why not give characters more armor? It makes sense for characters who don't have it at all, to don't have it. But yeah, I'm just gonna stop myself before we sit here for another hour. Which brings me to one of the characters that is actually announced and is frequently being leaked now at the moment. Which is Lupa, I think she was called. I have an issue with her design, right? Because her design, if you look at the concept arts, I feel if these actually are the concept arts, I don't know what it is, but I feel like this concept art in particular is so much better than the leaked design at the moment. Like, why? How come that for Lupa, over the different iterations and variants, she gradually loses clothing? What is going on? What are we doing? Like, I feel like this one in particular is the best design you could come up with. You still have like emphasis on the features, like the thighs. The thighs on the current design go crazy. But, you know, you have the armor piece, which I think even looks better. But then also, like, just layers of clothing. And we know from Zani, it works. It looks great. Why are we gradually reducing it? I don't fully get it. I personally am not all too excited for Lupa as a character. Her kit might convince me otherwise, but it's just, I feel like it's a design blunder. I know some takes on the internet which say similar things. So I'm glad I'm not alone on this. Moving away from the characters, right? I did a lot of yapping there. We move over to my general worries of Wuthering Waves going forward. Wuthering Waves is a phenomenal game and has the potential to be one of the greatest games out there at the moment. And I'm leaving out the word gacha for a reason. It's a gacha, yes. However, there's the great things about this game are not the gacha elements. It's the story, it's the world building, it's the environments, and the characters if you leave out that you have to gamble for them. The gacha alone is limiting the game and its potential in so many ways. With Wuthering Waves and other games, which might be caused by being a live service game, that it doesn't have a clear goal for most players. some players who are just, overly invested in the gameplay. The meta players, the ones that always try to make guides, that always try to maximize the damage output. They, of course, have a goal. They're never gonna reach that goal, because there's always something new and more to optimize on. For the rest, there isn't a goal, right? It's only just play the story, explore the new region, build your characters, and then probably not play the game until the next patch. Repeat. I'm not too knowledgeable on this just to say how this could improve. I feel it needs more direction. It needs more things to do outside this gameplay loop. And this is also a thing that ties in with the echo grind problem that was a thing a couple months ago. Yeah, when everyone was mad about the echo grind. I view it in a different light. It's just this gameplay loop that is repetitive and it is not rewarding enough, really. I think... Oh, whoops, I just angered them. Let me just go away. I think exploration in Wuthering Waves actually mitigates that. It's actually a great way to get out of this gameplay loop. But there isn't enough of it, right? The exploration already is great, but I want to see more, puzzles, more engagement in the world. And then the gameplay loop of grind is like, whatever, because you have this other stuff to do in between. Events are great for that as well, yeah. But I just want to have something more permanent. I think the fishing event was really great for that, because it actually created something outside of just an event. You go around and you fish. But it also had an end. And I wish it was kind of just more deep-rooted. And I'm not going to talk about Jinjo, because Jinjo is kind of just out of the picture. It is entirely different. Exploring it feels a lot different. So they should definitely fix that by allowing being able to fly in those regions as well. In some way or another. Or just, travel more quickly. But everyone's gonna forget about it as soon as it's like, 100% completed. Now, also what would be great to see is just more unlockable content. For example, unlocking even more titles, sigils, and avatars that are, already in place. Or just unlocking other things. Now, they would need to introduce, new unlockables. I think even, like, phantoms or enemies and bosses is another great thing they added, but there needs to be more. I believe that equipment, in this case, like, a character's weapons, right, should not be hidden behind gacha. I am a firm believer of just unlocking equipment by doing challenges. Might be partially because I come from playing Elden Ring. Great game. I already find it great that there is no 50-50 on the weapons banner. But I also feel like, because they already have, like, equipment as an unlockable, reduced to gacha, there needs to be something to replace it. And talking about the gacha in general, they should, like, make the gacha even more fair. It is already more fair than other gachas out there, but it should go the extra mile. It should do more. 50-50s, for example. Generally, they suck. The characters you see within this background recording, these are all the 5 stars I have, really. And if I had lost the 50-50 on each of them, I would be fuming. I'm lucky I didn't. I hate them. And even if it's just, like, the first step to betterment is just having the first copy of a character you pull being guaranteed and not hidden behind a 50-50. dupes afterwards, I don't feel as strongly about having a 50-50 behind those. But even then, 50-50s in general are not necessary at all. If you make a good game, if you make good characters, they will sell no matter what. And just having 50-50s seems too exploitative, right? So I wish they cracked down on that even more. It feels like Wuthering Waves attempts to be better than other gacha games, but doesn't commit yet. And the next I want to mention are the enemies and the bosses. Tying in with, like, the elements. We know already every character has an element they utilize, right? And there's, you know, and we heard rumors in the past that characters might have two elements. I'm not sure if in, I think Cardathea was rumored to have that. I'm not sure if it is the case, but so far elements are only utilized in having either resistances on bosses, or having buffs and debuffs in the Tower of Adversity. But I feel like there needs to be more. And there are multiple things you can do to achieve that. For example, having different approaches to boss design. Because right now I feel like team composition and bosses depend on just raw damage. But what if you had different gameplay loops in bosses? For example, bosses who have shields. Bosses who take damage only when they are parried, or when their like toughness bar, or what it is called, is depleted, or taking only damage from intro and outro skills. Maybe linking the boss's HP with other enemies, or like having two bosses on the field at the same time and them sharing HP. Them having like an invincibility phase and spawning waves of enemies. This way you would create more variety in team composition, not only relying on raw damage output, but also just doing different things. And even different team combinations than what you would usually see. And that would also like create new ways you could create a character. A character just, you know, more orientated towards, I don't know, let's say, doing more damage the more enemies it attacks at the same time. I don't know if this is already a thing in a character's kit, but you get what I mean. Even that could give elements more relevancy if certain elements maybe like triggered different status effects. That actually might be a stupid take, but I thought about this, and maybe status effects in general. This might be also because I play too much Souls-like, but also like maybe a character that does bleed or have actually burn. Not in the way of elemental reactions. That is that, really. I briefly want to mention some things I want to see as well. For example, like a game mode in which you can use, or in which you use all three robot types at the same time. As in like the Fleur-de-Lis boss fight in the story. Because I think just casting intro skill after intro skill, it was such a cinematic masterpiece. Like, and you got to play it. I think it looked great. And just having this coolness factor, I want to see in a game mode. Maybe just an event, but something to you know, play with that idea. One thing I feel very strongly about is the mouse in the story. After every loading screen, cutscene, whatnot, The mouse resets to the middle of the screen every time. And it's so annoying. Please, Kuro Games, if you can, get rid of that. God, I hate it. And one more thing I want to see is maybe a potential rebrand of the game. Like the Wuthering Waves title screen still has like the icon says Yang Yang on it, which I feel like she doesn't have the story relevancy she is supposed to have. So a rebrand really feels alright, justified. Especially because the Steam version, as the Steam banner, uses Zani. Entirely different, right? So it would be entirely justified there. I see there is a giant mosquito in my room. I'm gonna have to kill that in a second. Oh boy. But yeah. Really, to round it all up, coming to the end of things. I personally wouldn't mind even 2 filler patches in between each, like, story. If it means that the story was really just full-fledged, grand, and full of surprises. I can wait a little longer if it means that the story is gonna be absolute cinema. As Wuthering Waves is a live service game, keep in mind that the player has a huge impact on the direction it goes. And hold the devs accountable for fuck-ups, right? Not saying that Kuro Games fucked up anything. I think they did exceptional. It's just some things that may need some more work. And then also praise the good work that they do, because they deserve it. If a dev team does well, they should get all the praise they can get. Right? But keep in mind, balance is right. If you praise a game, also point out its flaws. And I hope you just enjoyed this video. Please, if you feel like any of my points were unjustified, maybe wrong, not explained enough, or really good, if you agree with me or disagree with me, please discuss in the comments. I'm happy to just, answer any question and discuss with you about whatever. If you haven't already, like and subscribe for more. I don't know when I'm gonna upload the next video. I don't know what the next video is gonna be. I'm not really consistent. If you take a look at my channel, you will know. And especially because this is the first video I did of this type. Don't forget to join the Discord server. You can also discuss things there. We have a dedicated Wuthering Waves channel. And yeah, all in all, hope you enjoyed. Have a great one.